I'm Rachel Myers, 42, pushing furniture sales at a big chain in Austin. My life's a steady hum. Decent job, nice house, a kid in college. My husband, Greg, is an IT guy. Solid but distant lately, like he's checked out. We've been married 20 years, and somewhere along the way, the spark got buried under mortgage payments and Owen's tuition bills. That Friday, Greg dragged me to his coworker's birthday at a karaoke bar downtown. I wasn't thrilled. Crowded, loud, and I'd rather be home with a glass of wine, but Greg insisted, said it'd be fun. So, I threw on a black top, jeans, and forced a smile. The place was packed, neon lights bouncing off sticky tables. Greg's crew was already there, belting out Bad Journey covers and slugging beers. I nursed a gin and tonic, half listening to their tech talk, feeling like a prop in someone else's night. Then Zach walked in. I hadn't seen him in years, not since. He was a scrawny kid hanging out with our son, Owen, back in high school. Now he was 23, a new intern at Greg's company, striding through the bar like he owned it. Taller, sharper, with an easy grin and a leather jacket that screamed he wasn't a kid anymore. My stomach did a weird flip. Like I'd missed a step going downstairs, he spotted us, waved and made his way over. Greg slapped his back all, "Hey man, glad you made it." Zach's eyes landed on me, and for a split second, they held. "Rachel, damn, you look good," he said, casual but pointed. I laughed it off, brushing my hair behind my ear, but my cheeks got warm. Greg didn't notice. He was already back, to arguing about some software update. The night dragged on. Zach sang a Springsteen tune, voice rough but confident, and I caught myself watching him a little too long. He'd glance my way, not pushy, just aware. It rattled me. I hadn't felt seen like that in ages. Greg was too busy geeking out to care. By 11, I was restless, my drink watered down. Zach slid into the booth next to me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something woodsy, sharp. "Not your scene, huh?" he asked, leaning in just enough to make it feel private. "Nope," I said, stirring my drink. "I'm here for Greg," he smirked. "Greg's lucky. Most wives wouldn't show up." His tone was light, but his eyes weren't. We talked, small, stuff. Owen's old soccer games, his internship, nothing deep. But it felt like he was studying me. Like he saw past the mom, the sales manager, the routine. It was unsettling. And electric. In the car later, Greg was rambling about work, oblivious. I pulled out my phone, heart pounding like I was 16, and found Zach on Instagram. My fingers hovered, then typed, "Looked good tonight, didn't expect to see you." I hit send before I could overthink it, my pulse loud in my ears. Greg didn't notice, he never does. Monday rolled in heavy, the weekend's buzz fading into spreadsheets and client calls. Greg was buried in some coding project, barely looking. Up from his laptop at breakfast. "Hey, can you take my car to the shop?" he asked, tossing me the keys. "Got a scratch on the bumper?" I sighed but nodded. Another errand, another thing to juggle. His SUV smelled like coffee and gym bags as I drove it to the auto shop, a squat building off I-35 with oil-stained floors and a waiting area that reeked of burnt popcorn. I was scrolling emails on my phone, perched on a plastic chair, when my phone pinged. "Zach, you around? I'm nearby." My heart did that stupid lurch again. I shouldn't have replied, but my fingers moved anyway. At the auto shop on Riverside, Greg's car. 10 minutes later, his black pickup pulled into the lot, tires crunching gravel. He stepped out, jeans and a faded t-shirt, looking too relaxed for a guy who just showed up uninvited. "Coffee?" he asked, nodding toward a food truck across the street. I hesitated, glancing at the shop's counter. The guy there said it'd be another hour. "Sure," I said, grabbing my purse. We crossed the street, ordered 2 iced coffees, and ended, up in his truck's cab, windows down, the hum of traffic outside. It felt like a bubble, separate from my real life. He asked about my job, my day, and I found myself talking, really talking, about the grind, the clients who think they're interior designers, the way I'm always on, but never quite enough. He listened, head tilted, like he was actually hearing me. Then he laughed, low and easy. "Didn't know you were this cool, Rachel," Greg never said. The compliment landed like a stone in still water, rippling through me. We got to talking about Owen, old memories, How Zach and him used to sneak beers at summer camp, how I'd bust them but let it slide. You were always the chill mom, he said, grinning. Still are. I rolled my eyes. But inside, I was glowing. When was the last time someone called me anything but reliable? The conversation drifted, and I caught him looking at me, not staring, just noticing my hair, my hands, the way I laughed. It wasn't creepy, but it was deliberate. I felt awake, like I'd been sleepwalking for years and someone just shook me. You okay? He asked, catching me staring out the window. I nodded. Too quick. Yeah, just long day. Back at the shop, the car was ready. Zach walked me over, hands in his pockets. See you around, he said, and it sounded like a promise. I drove home, Greg's SUV purring, but my mind was stuck in that truck. Later, in the bathroom mirror, I studied my face. Crow's feet, a few grays. But my eyes were bright, alive. For the first time in forever. I didn't feel invisible, and that scared the hell out of me. Sunday morning, Greg was in full dad mode. Hauling out the grill for a backyard barbecue, he'd invited his work crew, said it'd be a chill way to unwind. I was on edge, knowing Zach might show. Part of me hoped he wouldn't. Part of me, the part I didn't want to admit existed, hoped he would. I busied myself with prep, chopping veggies, setting out beers, trying to drown the static in my head. The backyard filled up fast. Greg's colleagues sprawled on lawn chairs, kids ran around, and classic rock hummed from a Bluetooth speaker. I played host, refilling drinks, laughing at dumb jokes, but my eyes kept darting to the gate. When Zach walked in, gray t-shirt clinging to his shoulders, a six-pack in hand, my stomach knotted. He looked too comfortable, like he belonged here. He nodded at me, polite, but his eyes lingered a beat too long. Greg was oblivious, flipping burgers, yakking about cloud servers. I stuck to the sidelines, sipping a seltzer, watching Zach blend in. He was quieter than at the karaoke bar, tossing a football with someone's kid. But I felt him, his presence, like a low hum you can't ignore. I told myself to stay away, to focus on the guac, the playlist, anything. But when Greg asked me to grab more charcoal, Zach was already by the grill, poking at the coals. We were alone for maybe a minute, the air thick with smoke and heat. He didn't look at me, just said low, "You're pissed today. It looks good on you. Real." My breath caught. It wasn't flirty. It was raw, like he saw the parts of me I kept locked up. I gripped the tongs, muttering, "Don't." But my voice was weak, and he knew it. Before I could say more, Greg bounded over, clapping Zach on the shoulder. "This guy's killing it at work," he said, grinning. Then, out of nowhere, "Hey, Zach, summer's coming. Rent's brutal. Want to crash here a month? We got space." My heart stopped. I forced a laugh, said, "What, we're running a hostel now?" But my chest was tight. Zach just smirked, shrugging. "Maybe. Sounds nice." The rest of the day, I was a robot. Smiling, serving, cleaning. Zach didn't push, didn't hover, but I felt his eyes. When he left, he brushed past me, his hand grazing my arm, accidental but not. I stood frozen, the weight of Greg's casual offer sinking in. Him, here, in my house. The idea was insane, dangerous, and yet, as I scraped plates into the trash, I couldn't stop picturing it. Zach's boots by the door, his laugh in my kitchen. I hated myself for it. Greg, wiping down the grill, called, "Out, good day, right?" I nodded, my throat dry. Yeah, great. But inside, everything was tilting, and I didn't know how to make it stop. It was a brutal Wednesday, the kind where every client call dragged and my inbox felt like quicksand. I stayed late at the office, pushing through a sales report, the hum of the AC my only company. Greg was at some company happy hour, probably, debating code over IPAs. My phone buzzed around 8 p.m. "Zach, you eat yet? I'm grabbing takeout, can swing by." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. I should have said no. I was starving, though. And the office was a ghost town. "Sure," I typed. At the store on 6th, he showed up 20 minutes later, leaning against his truck in the parking lot, holding a paper bag from a taco joint. "Figured you forgot dinner," he said, handing it over. His fingers brushed mine, and I ignored the jolt it sent up my arm. We stood there, awkward for a second. Then I mumbled something about eating inside. He followed me into the building, the glass doors hissing shut behind us. In the elevator, it was just us, the air stale, and close. I clutched the takeout bag, staring at the floor numbers ticking up. Zach was quiet, hands in his pockets, but I could feel him, his energy, like a wire about to snap. At the 6th floor, the elevator lurched, lights flickering. It didn't stop, just shuddered, trapping us in that metal box. My pulse spiked, not from the glitch, but from him. He turned, eyes locking on mine. No words, just this heavy, unspoken thing. Then, slow, like he was giving me an out, he reached out, his fingertip grazing my cheek. It wasn't pushy. It was careful, testing. My breath hitched, but I didn't move, didn't pull away. "Say stop, and I'm gone," he said, voice low, rough. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The silence was my answer. He leaned in, and the kiss was quick, warm, like sinking into something you know you shouldn't. His lips were soft, but there was an edge, a hunger that mirrored the ache I'd been ignoring for years. It lasted maybe 5 seconds before the elevator dinged, doors sliding open. I stepped, out, legs unsteady, the taco bag crinkling in my grip. I didn't look back, didn't say a word, just walked to my office, heart hammering. I sat at my desk, staring at the unopened food, my cheek still burned where he'd touched it. I could have stopped him. Should have. But I didn't. And that truth settled in my gut like a stone. Greg texted later, asking if I was home. "Still at work," I lied, my fingers shaking. I drove home in silence, the city lights blurring past. In the bathroom mirror, I looked at myself. Same face, same lines. But something was different. Something was awake. And I wasn't sure I could put it back to sleep. "System. It looks like your response was cut off, and the closing tag for the artifact is incomplete. I'll complete the response for Part 4, ensuring it adheres to the guidelines, maintains the ISO, requested lengthy, and aligns with the tone and style of the previous parts. I'll also use a new artifact ID, since this is a continuation of the story but a distinct part, and I'll avoid repeating content or deviating from the plan." It was a grueling Wednesday, the kind where every client call felt like wading through mud, and my inbox was a losing battle. I stayed late at the office, grinding out a sales report, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly. Greg was at a company happy hour, probably deep in some nerd debate over craft beer, around 8 p.m. My phone lit up. "Zach, you eat yet? Grabbing takeout can drop by." I stared at the message, my thumb frozen. The smart move was to say no, to keep the line drawn. But my stomach growled, and the office was dead quiet. "Okay," I typed. "At the store on 6th, he pulled, up 20 minutes later, leaning against his black pickup in the parking lot, a paper bag from a taco truck in hand. "Knew you'd skip dinner," he said, passing it over. His fingers grazed mine, and I pretended not to notice the spark it sent. Up my arm. We stood there, the night air cool, my brain scrambling for an exit. "I'll eat inside," I mumbled, turning toward the building. He followed, his steps easy, like this was normal. In the elevator, it was just us, the air thick with that canned, recycled smell. I hugged the takeout bag, eyes glued to the floor numbers creeping up. Zach stood a foot away, hands in his pockets, but his presence filled the space, heavy and deliberate. I could hear his breathing, steady, while mine felt jagged. At the 6th floor, the elevator jerked. A flicker of lights, a grinding noise. It didn't stop, just hung there, trapping us. My heart kicked up, not from the glitch, but from the way he shifted. Closer now. He turned, his eyes meeting mine, steady and unapologetic. No words, just this pull, like gravity I'd been dodging for weeks. Then, slow, giving me every chance to back away, he lifted his hand, his fingertip brushing my cheek. It was gentle, but it burned, waking up something I'd buried deep. My breath caught, but I didn't move. "Tell me to stop, and I will," he said, voice low, rough around the edges. I opened my mouth, but the word wouldn't come. My silence was louder than anything. He leaned in, and the kiss was brief, warm, like stepping into a current you can't fight. His lips were soft, but there was a hunger there, matching the one I'd been ignoring for years. It was over in seconds, the elevator lurching back to life with a ding. The doors slid open. I stepped out, legs shaky, the taco bag crinkling in my grip. I didn't look at him, didn't speak, just walked to my office, my pulse loud enough to drown out the world. I dropped into my chair, staring at the unopened bag. My face felt hot where he'd touched it. I could have stopped him. Should have, but I didn't, and that truth settled like lead in my chest. Greg texted later, asking if I was home. Still working, I replied, my hands trembling. Driving home, the city lights streaked past, and in the bathroom mirror, I studied my reflection. Same tired eyes, same faint lines, but something was alive now, restless. And I didn't know how to shut it off. Work was a treadmill set too fast that week, and by Friday, I was wiped. Greg was supposed to head to Dallas for a furniture expo, but he bailed last minute. Some crisis at the office. Can you go instead? He asked, barely looking up from his laptop. I groaned but agreed. Then, on impulse, I texted Zach. Heading to Dallas for an expo. Want to tag along? Could use a designer's eye. It sounded innocent enough. It wasn't. He said yes. And by Saturday morning, we were on I-35 in my SUV, the road stretching out under a gray sky. Zach was easy company, cracking jokes, fiddling with the radio, telling stories about his first internship. I laughed more than I had in months, the tension in my shoulders loosening. But every time his hand brushed the gear shift near mine, my skin prickled. I kept my eyes on the road, gripping the wheel a little too tight. The expo was a blur. Booths, handshakes, glossy catalogs. Zach was charming, tossing around design terms like he'd been in the game for years. Clients ate it up. By evening, we were done, and I was starving. We hit the hotel's lobby bar, all sleek wood and dim lights. 2 whiskeys in. The air felt softer, the edges of my guilt blurry. Zach leaned back, watching me over his glass. You're different away from Austin, he said. Less caged, I snorted, but his words hit hard. Caged, huh? That's dramatic. He just shrugged, his eyes steady. You tell me. The conversation drifted. Work, life, the way I used to paint before Owen and Bills took over. He listened, like he cared, and it felt good. Too good. It was late when we headed upstairs. His room was 2 doors down from mine. At my door, I fumbled with the keycard, my head buzzing. He stepped closer, not crowding, just there. Night, Rachel, he said. But he didn't move. I looked up, and the pull was too strong. Come in, I said, barely a whisper. I didn't. Think it through, didn't want to. Inside, it was quiet. We talked, and for a while, the weight of everything faded. Not regret, exactly, just the weight of what I'd done. In the mirror, my face was flushed, alive. I didn't recognize her, but I didn't hate her either. Greg called at 1 a.m., his voice fuzzy. You okay? How's Dallas? I was back in my room, sheets cold. Fine, I said, my voice steady. Just tired. Gonna sleep. He bought it. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, Zach's cologne still faint on my skin. I'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. But for the first time in forever, I felt like I was breathing. Back in Austin, the world felt sharper, like someone cranked the contrast. Work was the same. Meetings, quotas, fake smiles. But I was different. The Dallas trip left a mark, a secret I carried in my bones. Zach was bolder now, his texts coming. Faster, his tone less careful. At first, it was thrilling, like a game I was winning. But then he started pushing Monday. I was at a client lunch when he slid into the booth across from me at the cafe, uninvited. What are you doing here? I hissed, glancing around. He just grinned, stealing a fry off my plate. Was in the neighborhood. You looked lonely. His voice was teasing, but his eyes were hard, like he was testing me. I brushed it off, kept my cool, but my pulse was racing. This wasn't cute anymore. He began appearing more often. Unexpected but casual. It made me uneasy. He knew I was nervous, and he liked it. I deleted the message, but it sat in my head, heavy. Greg noticed something was off. We were cleaning up after dinner when he said, "Zach's been around a lot. He bugging you?" His tone was casual, but his eyes searched mine. I forced a laugh, wiping down the counter. "Nah, he's just chatty young guy, probably bored." Greg nodded, but I saw the flicker of doubt. I'd lied to him before, about late nights at work, about stress. But this was different. This was a door I couldn't reopen. I started avoiding Zach, dodging his texts, keeping my gym visits random, but he was always there, a shadow I couldn't shake. At a work event, he caught me alone. By the bar? "You're pulling back," he said, voice low, almost amused. "Think that'll make it go away?" I glared at him. "I'm not playing your game." He stepped closer, his breath warm. "You started it, Rachel. Don't act like you didn't." I walked away, heart pounding, but his words clung to me. He wasn't wrong. I'd let this happen, invited it even. Now it was a leash. And he was holding the other end. In bed that night, Greg's arm heavy across my waist. I stared into the dark. I wasn't just hiding from Zach. I was hiding from myself. And the truth that I'd built this trap with my own hands, by midweek. I was unraveling, jumping at every text, scanning every room for Zach's shadow. I needed an anchor, something to pull me back to solid ground. So when Adam, my high school boyfriend, texted about grabbing lunch, I said yes. He was in town, freshly divorced and safe, someone who knew me before I was Greg's wife, Owen's mom, or Zach's. Whatever I was, we met at a diner off Lamar, all vinyl booths and greasy fries. Adam looked older, softer around the edges, but his smile was the same, warm and steady. We talked about old times, mixtapes, sneaking into dive bars, the summer. We thought we'd run away to California. It was easy, like slipping into an old sweater. He asked about my life, and I gave him the polished version. Good job, great kid, happy marriage. The lie came out smooth, but I felt it, sharp in my chest. Adam didn't push, just nodded, saying, "You seem good, Rachel. Still got that spark." I smiled, but my eyes kept darting to the door, half expecting Zach to stroll in. He didn't, but the fear followed me. Every laugh with Adam felt like a performance, my mind replaying Zach's last text, his smirk at the bar. I was cheating on my affair with a lunch that meant nothing, and it was pathetic. Adam paid the bill, hugged me goodbye, and said, "Let's not wait 20 years next time." I nodded, my throat tight, and watched him go. Later, I found out Adam had run into Greg at a tech conference a month back. He'd sent Greg a text. "Caught up with Rachel today, old friends. Man, she's still a knockout." Greg showed me the message that night, his eyebrow raised. "Lunch. With Adam, huh? What's that about?" His tone was light, but there was an edge like he was fishing. I shrugged, stirring my coffee. "Just to catch up, he's in town. Reached out. No big deal." Greg studied me, then nodded. "Cool. Just didn't know you two were still tight?" I laughed it off, but my stomach churned. I dodged the question, but the lie felt like a layer of grime I couldn't wash off. I was lying to Greg about Adam, to Adam about my life, to myself about Zach. It was a house of cards, and every move risked collapse. That night, I sat on the couch, scrolling through work emails. But my mind was elsewhere. Zach hadn't texted in days, and the silence was worse than his games. It left me wondering what he was planning, where he'd pop up next. In the bathroom, I caught my reflection. Tired eyes, tight jaw. I used to think I was honest, the kind of person who faced things head on. Now, I was dodging truths like punches, and every lie made me smaller. Greg called from the bedroom. "You coming to bed?" I said, "Yeah, in a sec." But stayed there, staring at the mirror, trying to find the woman I used to know. She was gone, and I wasn't sure who was left. Owen came home unannounced on a Thursday, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, eyes red and puffy. He'd been at college, but now he was here, standing in our kitchen, looking like a kid again. "I messed up," he mumbled, voice cracking. He'd flunked 2 classes, got an academic warning, and dropped his phone in a parking lot, shattering it. Greg was livid, pacing the living room, his voice sharp. "You're throwing away your future, Owen. What the hell happened?" I stepped in, my hand on Owen's arm, trying to calm things. He's here now. We'll figure it out. Owen curled up on the couch, head in his hands, and I sat beside him, stroking his hair like I did when he was little. My heart ached for him, but it was splitting for another reason. Every time I looked at my son, I saw Zach, his friend, his brother from high school, the guy I'd slept with in Dallas. The secret was a knife, twisting deeper with every tear Owen shed. That evening, Zach showed up at our door, a manila folder in hand. "Got some project stuff for Greg," he said, all casual, like he hadn't been haunting my life. Owen lit up, scrambling off the couch to hug him. "Dude, thank God you're here," he said, voice thick. "Everything's so screwed up." Zach hugged him back, his eyes flicking to me over Owen's shoulder. I froze, my hands clenching the dish towel I was holding. He was standing in my house holding my son, and I couldn't breathe. Greg took the folder, oblivious, and Zach lingered, chatting with Owen about college, offering advice like some wise older sibling. I busied myself in the kitchen, chopping onions for dinner, the sting in my eyes a good excuse for tears. Every laugh from the living room felt like a punch. Owen trusted him, Greg trusted him, and I'd let him into our lives in a way that could ruin everything. Dinner was tense, Greg still fuming, Owen quiet. Zach left after a quick goodbye, his hand brushing my arm as he passed. Subtle, deliberate. I flinched but kept my face neutral. Later, as I tucked Owen into the guest bed, he mumbled, "Zach's cool, Mom. He gets it." I nodded, my throat tight, and kissed his forehead. "Get some rest, kiddo." That night, Greg and I lay in bed, the silence heavy. He reached for my hand, his voice soft. "You're a good mom, Rachel. I'm lucky you're my wife." I stared at the ceiling, his words landing like bricks. He didn't know, couldn't know, the truth eating me alive. I'd betrayed Owen, not just Greg, by letting Zach so close. I whispered, "Love you." But it felt hollow, like I was reading a script. The woman Greg loved wasn't here anymore. She was buried under choices I couldn't undo, and all I could do was lie there, trapped in the wreckage of my own making. Greg decided we needed a break, so he planned a Sunday trip to the coast, Port Aransas, a couple hours' drive. "Just us, Owen, and some of the guys," he said, tossing beach chairs into the SUV. I knew the guys meant Zach, and my stomach sank. I didn't want him there, not with Owen still raw from his college mess, not with Greg so close to noticing something off. But I couldn't say no without raising flags. So I packed the cooler, faked a smile, and went along. The beach was crowded, families sprawled under umbrellas, the air thick with salt and sunscreen. Owen was quieter than usual, sticking close to me, helping set up the canopy. Greg was in his element, cracking beers, joking with his coworkers. Zach showed up late, board shorts and a faded tank top, his sunglasses hiding his eyes. He nodded at me, polite, but I felt the weight of his presence. Like a storm cloud on the horizon, we ate sandwiches, chips, watermelon, and the group settled into easy chatter about work, houses, the future. Greg started talking about refinancing our mortgage, and Owen chimed in about maybe transferring. Schools, Zach, lounging on a towel, cut in, his voice light but pointed. "What about you, Rachel? You ever think about shaking things up?" His tone was playful, but his eyes weren't. Everyone laughed, thinking it was a joke, but I felt exposed, like he'd peeled back my skin. I snapped back, sharper than I meant. "Some of us like steady. Zach, not everyone needs chaos." The group went quiet for a beat. Then Greg chuckled, smoothing it over. "She's got you there, man." Zach just grinned, leaning back, but I saw the glint in his expression, amused, like he'd scored a point. The rest of the day, I kept my distance, playing frisbee with Owen wading in the surf, but Zach's words stuck, gnawing at me. He wasn't wrong. I'd been craving something more, something alive. That's why I'd let him in. Later, as we packed up, Greg pulled me aside, his brow furrowed. "What? Was that with Zach earlier? You seemed pissed." I shrugged, brushing sand off my hands. "He just gets under my skin. Thinks he's clever." That night, Greg cornered Zach at the parking lot, his voice low but firm. "Hey man, ease up on Rachel. She's not your punching bag." Zach nodded. All respect. But when Greg turned away, he shot me a text. You'll miss me when I'm gone. Don't kid yourself. I deleted it, my hands shaking. But he was right. I hated him for it. But the ache was there. A void. I'd filled with him and couldn't unfill driving home, Owen asleep in the back seat. Greg reached for my hand. Good day, yeah? I nodded, staring out at the darkening highway. I was still here. Wife, mom, safe. But inside, I was slipping, caught between the life I had and the one I'd tasted. And I didn't know how to choose. Weeks passed, and the tension with Zach didn't fade. It festered. I avoided him where I could, dodging his texts, skipping work events where he'd be. But Austin's small enough that you can't hide forever. On a humid Friday night, I ended up at a bar downtown, dragged along by a coworker for her birthday. I was sipping a mediocre margarita, half listening to office gossip, when I saw him. Across the room, Zach leaning against the bar, a beer in hand, laughing with a girl, young, blonde, all easy smiles. My chest tightened, but I looked away, tried to focus on the conversation. Then he kissed her, right there by the exit, public and unapologetic. It wasn't subtle, a slow, deliberate claim. I froze, my glass cold against my palm. He caught my eye as he pulled back, and instead of looking away, he held my gaze. His lips curved into a smirk, sharp and knowing, like he'd planned it. I turned back to my group, my face hot, pretending I hadn't seen. But my hands were shaking, and the noise of the bar felt like static. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Zach. Thought you were special, didn't you? The words hit like a slap, cold and cruel. I stood in the bathroom, staring at the screen, my reflection pale in the mirror. I wanted to scream, to throw something. But instead, I gripped the sink, my knuckles white. Then I swung my phone against the wall, not hard enough to break it, but enough to feel the jolt. It clattered to the tile, and I left it there for a minute, my breath ragged. Driving home, the city lights blurred, my mind replaying that smirk, that kiss. I'd been a fool. Thinking I was more than a game to him. I'd let him in, risked everything. Greg, Owen, my life. For what? A fling that meant nothing to him. He'd used me, not for love or even lust, but for control. A way to feel big. I was just a moment, a notch, a story he'd probably laugh about later. Greg was asleep when I got home. The house dark. I slipped into the bathroom, splashing water on my face, trying to wash away the sting. In bed, he stirred, his voice groggy. You okay, babe? You're crying. I hadn't realized tears were on my cheeks. Just tired, I said, turning away. Long night. He mumbled something and drifted off, his hand heavy on my hip. I lay there, eyes burning, the truth settling in. Zach hadn't just betrayed me. He'd shown me who I'd become. I'd chased a feeling, a spark, and ended up here, hollowed out. The woman who'd laughed with Greg, raised Owen, built a life. She was slipping away, and I'd let it happen. The worst part? Even knowing it, I still felt the pull, the ache for what Zach had woken up. And that scared me more than anything. Months slipped by, quiet and heavy, like snow piling up. Zach was gone. Snagged a job in New York, or so I heard through Greg's work chatter. His absence didn't fix anything. It just left a void, a cold space where my choices echoed. Owen was back at school, trying to claw his way out of academic probation, texting me updates about classes and new friends. Greg was still Greg, steady, kind, buried in his code. And me? I was here, going through the motions, a ghost in my own life. Work kept me busy, the furniture store humming with holiday sales. I smiled at clients, pitched sectionals, and stayed late to avoid the silence at home. But every now and then, I'd catch myself in a mirror, lines deeper, eyes duller, and wonder when I'd stopped recognizing my own face. The thrill of Zach, the rush of being seen, was a faded high, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. I'd burned something down inside myself, and the ashes were all that remained. Our 21st anniversary came in December. Greg planned a quiet dinner at home, just us, with takeout from our favorite Italian place. He lit candles, poured wine, and looked at me across the table like I was still the girl he'd married. "I know things haven't been right," he said, his voice soft, careful. "I don't know what happened, Rachel, but I love you. Always will." His hand reached for mine, warm and familiar, and I wanted to cry, to spill everything. Dallas, the lies, the way I'd let Zach unravel me. But I didn't. I squeezed his hand, smiled, and said, "I love you too." The words tasted like dust. After dinner, we sat on the couch, a blanket over our legs, some old movie flickering on the TV. Greg's arm was around me, and for a moment, it felt like before. Safe, solid. But inside, I was miles away. I wasn't the wife he thought I was, not anymore. That Rachel was gone, replaced by someone who'd chased a spark and found only smoke. Didn't know how to get her back, or if I even could. Owen called the next day, excited about a new class. "You okay, Mom?" "You sound off," I laughed, brushing it off. "Just tired, kid, proud of you." But as I hung up, the weight settled heavier. I was still their anchor, Greg's wife, Owen's mom. But it was a role now, a costume I wore. Inside, it was winter, barren and still, like a field after a fire. The damage was done, but the surface looked clean, polished, almost beautiful in its ruin. I kept moving, work, home, repeat, smiling when I had to, nodding when Greg spoke, cheering Owen on. But every step felt like walking on glass, sharp and fragile. I'd survived Zach, survived myself, but at a cost. The life I had was still here, waiting. I just wasn't sure I deserved it anymore.